Hello and welcome back to the Facts of Facts, the only Facts of Life podcast that wants to ban that guy that's giving everybody Scott Baio haircuts.
Oof.
Get him off the set. They got to Cousin Jerry, and she is sporting a full Baio. It ain't pretty.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
No. We are here to discuss the season 3 finale of The Facts of Life. And it was not directed by Azad Khalada.
Who the hell is this Dolores person?
Dolores Ferraro. Well, I'm glad you asked. She has one of the most detailed IMDb bios, which I'm not going to go through, but I will say that she has every single stage play that she ever stage managed, along with the cast and the director. Really, she had a storied career in that world. It was pretty impressive, so I understand why it's all in there. But I guess there's no place for it on IMDb, so you just sat there and typed it all. Anyway.
So basically, it's clear that she's managing her own IMDb page.
Yes, she's stage managing her IMDb page. She made the switch to TV in '81, where she. Sorry.
I feel like there was another reference to someone who I think was a guest star on one of our more recent episodes, where it was like he clearly wrote his own bio, where it was like Dominik Rothbard lives and works in Los Angeles, longtime resident, and loves his cat and family.
I knew you were going to bring up my cat who's sitting right next to me. Yes, he was very specific about things that didn't go quite right for him, but he was okay because he had his grandkids. He was very nice. So Dolores Ferraro started TV in '81. She did 3 episodes of WKRP in Cincinnati, then this episode of television. Yeah. Then they throw her to the Different Strokes Wolves for an episode in 1983, and she'll do an Alice, a Mary, 2 New Hearts, a What a Country, and 4 episodes of the Ellen Burstyn Show.
Ellen broke up at my fault.
It was the Ellen Burstyn Show she did in 1986, I believe, which starred a young Megan Mullally and a very old Elaine Stritch as the mother-daughter-grandmother trio.
I feel like Elaine Stritch was never young.
Oh no, never young. I mean, never.
She came out of her mother's vaginal canal at the age of 70.
I believe that is the truth.
But a very fit 70, like a woman who still power walks with her friends, does her tap dancing on the weekends, does water aerobics, and probably does some cabaret type situation with the other people that live with her in the old folks home.
Yes, and then a 70-year-old woman popped out of her.
That's Elaine Stritch. That's her vibe.
Oh, okay. I thought her mom was 70 when Elaine Stritch fully formed came out.
Elaine Stritch came out fully as a 70-year-old, very active woman.
Oh, to a mom that was in her 30s?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay. I don't know why I thought everybody had to be old in this equation for some reason. Anyway, I watched, there's one episode of the Ellen Burstyn Show on YouTube, full with commercials and everything. I watched it. It was a joy. It's a gay man's dream come true watching these 3 together. They do a lot of acting. Megan Mullally is actually very, very good. Very early on, she got an applause break in the middle of the show, and she's not the one when you've got Elaine Stritch and Ellen Burstyn, and yours is your first show. So she was good. That was really good. Anyway, Dolores Ferraro ended her career doing a single episode of the short-lived Dee Wallace Eliot Gould sitcom Nothing Is Easy.
I'm sorry, I need to pause you for 1 second. My cat is doing something very bad.
All right. Well, I'll continue while you do that and just explain that the Nothing Is Easy show was described by IMDb as a couple with kids sitcom. There's no more details, just it's a couple with kids sitcom. You're good.
Nice and vague.
Yeah, I know you love Eliot Gould, so I thought I would bring that up for you.
I do. I recently watched a movie about swingers called Bob and Ted and Carol and Alice, where like it's basically like a wife swap, like orgy situation. And I would say like a good 50% of it is like Elliot Gould looking distressed and upset, wearing soiled, yellowed Y-front underpants.
Yellowed? That's terrible. Anyway, so the episode was written by the dastardly duo of Deirdre Fay and Stuart Wolpert, who every time they get their hands on an episode, it's like this one.
This one's crazy. Can we just talk about what the premise of this is and
let me get out the writers, and then I promise we can. That's how we do it every week. I'm almost done. And so there was also a story by credit to Hendrik van Leeuwen, who wrote this. He wrote a single, Silver Spoons, and besides that, he was a staff writer on Smurfs.
Oh yes.
Yes, I'm a big Smurf fan, and I actually have a big Smurf that I'm a fan of. Maybe I'll bring him out at some point in the podcast.
That's what you call your penis?
My big Smurf?
My big Smurf?
Yes.
Or your Papa Smurf?
I actually have a T-shirt that has Papa Smurf on it, giving the thumbs up, and it just says, "Call me Big Papa," and I wear it a lot.
Why are you wearing that right now?
I'm carrying a little quarantine weight right now, and a lot of my T-shirts are embarrassing. Anyway, so, okay, now we can talk about this episode. We've got all of the crew out of the way. Bring it on, Britt. What do you have to say?
So this is the finale, the season finale.
Yes.
So I will say, so this is ostensibly about book banning, which was happening. Yes. Which was actually happening in 1981 and 1982, and in Long Island. That was like a big, and it went to the Supreme Court. So obviously that's a fun thing to actually put into a sitcom about a girls' school where this was a rampant problem. It was people were burning books in school districts in the 80s. So I think it ostensibly is a cool, fun, school-related topic, but like classic facts of life, nothing that's exciting happens where we see it. Nothing happens. It's like we never see what they're talking about. We never see the angry parents who are storming these board meetings all the time to demand that these little girls not read, Catch-22.
They seem to mostly be in letters. Letters was what he was so worried about.
We never see Mr. Parker receive angry phone calls. We never see Natalie get fired for being from her editor-in-chief position of the school newspaper. Everything happens off screen.
Let me stop you for 1 second because I just want to bring this up. It's a fun fact. If you have like unless you're a name and you have a good deal where you can get a nice price, as a guest actor on a show, you get paid whether or not you say one line or say 18 lines, And they had all these talking people in the last scene, and you could have easily had somebody fire Natalie, which would have been a powerful scene. And just one of that cluster of talking obnoxious white people from the beginning of that scene could have easily just been the manager of the paper.
The faculty advisor. And I would have loved to have seen that scene because Natalie would have lost her fucking mind.
Yes.
And it would have
gotten to act.
It would have been very dramatic, but instead, the faculty advisor, whom we never see, sends Joe in to deliver the bad news because this show is cheap and bad.
They're saving up their money to go to Paris, which you're going to enjoy, so just be thankful. Anyway, let's get into this. The episode opens in the cafeteria, and we've got Blair and Tootie and Cousin Jerry watching a soap opera on a ridiculous portable TV.
So here's what I had to say about that. So they're all sitting in the cafeteria, of course, right? Why is Cousin Jerry here? For no reason. I guess they're still trying to make Cousin Jerry happen. right? But
Not
the
gonna
best,
happen.
no. But the best thing is that they're watching this bad, phony soap opera that we sometimes hear lines from, like, "Oh, I hate you, Richard. I hate you, hate you, I hate you, Richard." But it's on both the world's tiniest television that is also somehow unbelievably bulky.
Yes.
It's so small, but also big. It's like a paradox.
It is, and also, I've watched television on one of those TVs, and if you're on the side the way Tootie and Jerry are, you ain't seeing shit.
Yes, like the screen is smaller than this. Like my iPhone.
Which we watch television on all the time as a society. So,
but that's because your iPhone can be 3 inches from your eyes. So it
that's
feels
true.
like Max.
We learned that Cousin Jerry is there learning to do a soap opera routine for her act. I guess since the palsy jokes just ain't cutting it anymore.
Right, but that's the weird thing so we open on these 3 girls very closely watching the soap opera, right? And Cousin is there to learn how to make jokes about soap operas, which is basically how all stand-up routines are developed, where you think, I'm going to make jokes about something I've never seen before, have no experience with. So it sounds very natural and normal for me to be sort of like a subject matter expert on something. But it's sort of like it's like when Ellen made jokes about airplane seats, but she'd never actually been on an airplane.
It's weird. It's a weird choice for her to want to do this soap opera routine. And also it seems weird that she needs like an ambassador to show her soap operas and also on the world's tiniest TV. And Blair chastises her for not paying attention. And it feels like a weird window into their dysfunctions.
Yeah.
And also Tootie, when she goes, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, Tootie sociopathically goes, she loves him.
She goes, she loves him.
Yeah. It's just Tootie's got some brain issues. Anyway, Jerry is having problems keeping track of who's fucking who, and Blair's gorgeous hair tells her to invest some time and she'll get the hang of it. You watched this week's Saturday Night Live, right?
Yes.
So the sketch with the jiggly hair curls?
Yeah.
That was Blair's hair in this sketch. Her hair was so jiggly. Like, it just got freshly bounced.
Yeah, it did get freshly bounced.
So Jerry reminds Blair that she said, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is that, so I started saying that this was a classic Facts of Life episode where everything that's important happens off screen. We never see anything. We just hear people talk about it. Again, and also this is a classic Facts of Life episode where the audience doesn't know whether things are jokes because they're not jokes. And so they sort of laugh, but then they're like, this is where I should be laughing. That was delivered like a joke. But then they say, they kind of don't go like whole hog they don't commit to the laugh. So Cousin Jerry's like, I want to do this. I want to learn about soap operas because I want to develop this routine, but I can't keep track of who's doing what to who and how often. Blair says, invest some time. You'll get the hang of it. The audience titters. They're like, that sounded like a joke. And then everyone awkwardly pauses for like a good 3 to 4 seconds.
Just wanted to make sure that people were going to laugh. I think there was some subtle corporate sponsorship with Kmart there. I feel like they wanted to get their name in there. They were like, just say that the runs naked through Kmart and then maybe they'll come to our store.
But again, that's just such a weird thing because it's like, so Cousin Jerry then sort of says to Blair that she's being a phony because she said, like, you would rather run through a Kmart naked than watch a soap opera. And then Blair explains, well, I got sick, I got the flu, and then I spent a whole glorious week searching for tomorrow.
And I would like to talk about that.
So I Googled that and I was like, searching for tomorrow. And then I was like, that's a romance novel that came out in the 2000s. And then I discovered it was Search for Tomorrow, which is a
Yes.
very, very long-running soap opera.
Yes. So it was on since 1951 was when it started on CBS. And they moved it to NBC in 1982, the year that this episode was shot. And the switch was not particularly successful.
No.
So there was definitely the corporate synergy. They were saying, hey, Blair is watching this, so you should be watching it too. That's one thing. Also, very interesting, there's a woman named Mary Stewart who played the lead role of Jo.
Yes, I have a lot to say about this. Keep going.
Okay, we will talk about that. But here's the thing that I got really into is the next year, 1983, it was doing so badly on NBC and inspired by the movie Tootsie, which I know is a favorite of yours.
I have the exact same thing to say.
The fake?
Yes.
Yes. So they came up with a way to try to get ratings, and they pretended, like in Tootsie, that they lost the tapes. But they had enough time to shoot an Entertainment Tonight special on how they lost the tapes so that they could then do a live episode a la Tootsie, and people would tune in and watch. And the guy who was in the control room decided to record the entire thing and uploaded it to YouTube so you can hear the control room talk. And this was all a ploy to get viewers. It was just a lie.
Yeah, it was a huge rating stunt.
I love it. Anyway, what do you have about Mary Stewart, who played Jo for 35 years?
So she...
and also the best part is that the show got canceled in 1986, so NBC fucking crushed it in terms of that rating stunt. Anyway, go on. Tell me about Mary Stewart.
So she was on the show for 35 years without interruption. She played the same fucking character, right? And then they brought in a few but she won a Lifetime Achievement Daytime Emmy Award for her contribution to daytime television. The apron she wore in this show is hanging in the Smithsonian. Like she was a important person, and she had like enough balls. Well, you froze. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So she had enough sway, and as I said, balls and swag, that when you'll know who it is. Burnett, the one that started The Real World, the producer of The Real World.
Oh, Mark Burnett.
Yeah, so I think it was either him or isn't it a married couple? The wife?
Yes, yeah.
So she was brought in to like sex up the show later on and wanted to kill her off, Mary Stewart, to like rejigger, like kind of renew the show. And Mary Stewart was like, well, I'm going to quit. I'm too powerful. And so they fired her. And then also NBC was accused. Oh yeah. So in the 60s, Frank and Doris Hersley were brought in to liven it up. Right. And they wanted to kill off Joe's toddler by having him walk into traffic and get run over. And Mary Stewart was like, if that can't happen, that's too disgusting and depraved, I will quit. And so they fired them. And those people went on to create General Hospital.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they needed to create a hospital for all of the kids that they were writing walking into traffic.
And so a lot of famous people appeared on Search for Tomorrow, very much like Facts of Life. A lot of famous people started on this show. So a lot of famous people included Larry Hagman, Susan Sarandon, Lee Grant, Kevin Bacon, Kevin Kline, Angela Bassett, Jane Krakowski, and Don Knotts.
Huh.
So this was a launching pad, much like Facts of Life.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Way to go Search for Tomorrow.
I like the fact that like the irony is that the woman who the main character of Search for Tomorrow is like a widow who needs to sort of deal with her raise her kids on her own, and she's kind of like a housewife or whatever. She shares a name with our resident motorcycle riding bull dyke on this show. So
yeah, perfect. So anyway, Mrs. Garrett has 2 samples of fabrics for some new curtains. One is hideous, and the other one's not good either.
And the other one's blue.
Yes. She likes the pattern because it's so up.
Yeah.
But then the other one she likes because it's so blue. Can you do her so blue? It was so weird.
Yeah. It's so blue. Yeah, no. And she delivers this as though it's a joke, even though it 100% is not. And then the girls are ignoring her because they're deeply, invested and involved in their soap opera. And then she says to them, "Thank you for the input." And then in walks Joe and Nat. In walks No, and those two are screaming at one another.
And for no reason. Like, they're on the same side. It is eventually revealed. So the fact that Joe is so irate with Natalie is bizarre, and it seems to be about volume.
Yeah, because Natalie started getting freaked out because the library was banning the magazine.
Let's get to that in a second. But there was also that wonderful bit where Joe told her that at a library they're supposed to be peaceful and quiet.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that too.
Yeah, that was great.
Because a library is like a church.
Yes. I don't understand. Joe really just seems like she's never been mad. I don't get it at all.
Because Natalie started screaming in the library?
Anyway, Blair tries to shush her, and all she gets from Joe is a take a hike. No, go commit suicide or anything. So she really does seem mad at Natalie. Yeah. Mrs. Garrett wants to know the problem. Natalie gives a good monologue here, I thought.
I thought this was... So this episode had a lot of very irritating Natalie to me. Because...
I'm in the library.
Yeah. And I'm doing some research on a paper, right? Okay. So
it's such a long way to go because, like, first of all, why do we care about Ms. Magazine? Why can't we just go? I mean, sure we do. Why can't we just go straight to the books?
Completely.
Anyway, so she needs and also she has to explain why she needs Ms. Magazine. It can't be like, I just wanted to read it for my own edification. No. I have to do a research paper, so I need to get Ms. Magazine. I feel like she's just ashamed of her Ms. habit, but whatever. Ms. Magazine, by the way, is an American liberal feminist magazine co-founded by Gloria Steinem and Dorothy Pittman Hughes. I checked out the May 1982 issue, which would have been on the stands when this episode aired, and the cover is Mother-Daughter Sex Talk. Do feminists do it better?
I'll say this. We do.
The cover is this illustration of a mom and daughter each holding our bodies ourselves, but the daughter has a Simon game on her 4-poster bed, which was definitely used as a dildo. Anyway, I love... Oh, go ahead.
So I will say that this, I think, is this is a winking reference that the writers had, because one of the books that was banned in 81 and 82 was Our Bodies Ourselves. So they probably couldn't get that book, the title of that, because it's too salacious, into this episode. So they were just like, let's just do the feminist magazine, which teaches girls how to masturbate. It was enough of a way to go for it. Immediately was like, oh, that's that feminist book that's telling. Well, that's that feminist magazine that's telling girls to look at their vulvas with a hand mirror.
I mean, at the same time, I'm sure that the Facts of Life writers did not know that was going to be the cover when they wrote this episode.
I think that Our Bodies Ourselves was being banned, and that they tried to get that into the script, but it was too dirty-minded, and so they were just like, well, whatever. We'll put in the magazine that those feminists started, that is always about how to take control of your own pleasure.
Perhaps. So I love the Miss Muldoon continuity. Moose Jaw Muldoon returns as the librarian. Yeah. I was very happy about that. That's the way that you get a recurring character on this show. You don't have to pay her because she doesn't exist.
However, I will say this, that you're praising this show for the bare minimum of competency of managing to name the librarian, who's been named a few times in the season, the proper name. That they didn't just make up a new one.
Yes. Mrs. Garrett points out that there's a lot of feminists on campus. Why haven't we met any of these feminists?
Well, hold on, but let me just go back to the Miss Muldoon. Here's the thing. That's like when you like write your name on the SATs and you immediately get 200 points. So the fact that they remembered that, oh yeah, really good. Nice work on the continuity.
I mean, it's important that you write your name.
True.
Anyway, so I think Nat is handling this monologue great. I think she's funny with each. That's what I said.
Yeah.
And it's outrageous that Ms. has been canceled because it's considered offensive, even though, even worse, we find out that other books have been taken out for reevaluation. Jerry asks what that means, and Mrs. Garrett's like, censorship. And then Joe goes, that's what I said. And I was like, why? You stole Natalie's bit. Like, it's the rule of threes. Let her have her third one.
Mrs. Garrett says, a friendship? As though her dentures are going to fall out.
She does. You're right. It's the first time I thought she might have dentures.
She says a lot of things like that. Or this kind of situation where it's just, yeah.
Blair announces that it's the commercial, and Nat welcomes her back to the real world in a real bitchy way. I guess it's the Blair Warner Library, so you could say she's partially responsible for this. She could probably solve it with a single phone call, but she's busy with her soap opera plot, so let's pretend like she can't do that.
Yeah.
Nat hands Mrs. Garrett a list of the banned books: The Fixer, Catch-22, Slaughterhouse 5. Uh-huh. So I researched why these books were banned. I Googled The Fixer, came up with the article about the book banning dilemma. This article about The Fixer being banned in the New York Times was 5 days after this episode aired. I really do think you got to give them a little bit of props for how timely this episode was. Maybe not well made, but timely.
For sure. No, but I saw that article too. It was in the Times. It was published in 1982, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but this problem with the banning of books in Long Island, at a Long Island school district, had been going on for a year. So it's not timely. They just got lucky on this one.
Well, no, not lucky. It was something that was boiling up, and they obviously saw the Supreme Court case coming, and that's what they timed it with. The way this episode looks, I believe personally that this episode was not shot as the finale. I think this episode was shot earlier on in the season, and was tucked at the end to specifically coincide with this. Personally,
I totally buy that. That makes
because then it makes sense for all the backdoor pilots because they don't have to redress the fact set. They could just change it from a garage to whatever.
Yeah. So the fact that we're talking, so here's the reason why, if you're watching the visual podcast, why I'm wearing my glasses is because this is an episode about banning books, and I need my glasses to read.
All right, so Slaughterhouse 5 was anti-Christian, The Fixer, anti-Semitic, Catch-22, indecent language. The whole thing is so gay, so Long Island.
Well, so here's the best thing especially about Slaughterhouse 5, is that was written by Kurt Vonnegut, obviously, but it was based on him being a POW during the Second World War when he was in Dresden, and it was like the firebombing of that. It's a very sort of surreal book. In any case, the best thing is that I was like, oh yeah, I want to know more about like what Vonnegut, how he actually replied to the facts that his books were constantly being banned. So he said in the Paris Review, he said, my books are being thrown out of school libraries. And he's also very much like a troll. Like he would always be like, he's like, if you can't get my book in Mississippi, I will send you a free copy, like with like an inscription for myself. Like he was very much like, he knew how to like do his own promotion. Anyway, so he said, my books are being thrown out of school libraries all over the country because they're supposedly obscene. I've seen letters to small town newspapers that puts the Slaughterhouse 5 in the same class with Deep Throat and Hustler magazine. How could anyone masturbate to the Slaughterhouse 5? And I literally sat there going, listen, you're a 20 teenager, you can masturbate to anything. And also, there's Rule 34, there's porn for everything. If you think of it, it exists in porn form. And also, the best thing is that right after they mentioned Slaughterhouse 5, Blair says, I wrote my paper last year, my term paper last year on Slaughterhouse-5. So all I was thinking about as soon as she said that was, I jerked off so much during my term paper last year.
Yes, definitely. That was what she was implying. And also, Jerry's never met Blair before because she goes, oh, that is a good book. And then Blair's like, I was talking about my paper. That's one of the worst, lamest setups of all time. And it's just like, Jerry, you're the comedian. You shouldn't be having to do the setups. Leave the setups to Tootie, who barely has any lines and can actually set Blair up.
Yeah.
Jerry says that this sounds like book burning to her, and it's like book banning, rather. It's like, no shit, yes, that's book banning.
And isn't that illegal? And then Blair says, or at least a misdemeanor.
Which proves that she was paying attention to fucking Natalie, even though she was watching the show.
I wrote down in my notebook, no jokes here.
Also, I don't know if you noticed this, but when Tootie asks if it's illegal to ban books, she's like jittering like a coke fiend. Like it's very, very weird. I don't know why she had that little spasm and they kept it on camera, but I wish that they could have maybe redone it anyway. At least Tootie, when she asks if it's legal to ban books, the misdemeanor, that setup was fine. That setup worked because Tootie delivered it.
So Blair then cracks herself up, laughs at herself, and then says, get it? Ms. Demeanor. This is the level of joke? A pun?
I didn't say the joke was good. I was just saying that Tootie seamlessly set it up. I didn't feel the setup like I did with Jerry being like, that was a good book, knowing exactly where the joke is going 10 minutes earlier.
Sure.
I did not expect the misdemeanor joke, at the very least.
Okay, so it was a surprise. It had the element of surprise.
Yes. So Mrs. Garrett is shook. It couldn't happen here. Great Pet Shop Boys song, by the way. But Tootie and Blair are like, good. Glad the book's supposed to have done something bad.
Well, yeah. So I will say this. I will give this credit in this scene. Did you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm just going to repeat. So I'll give it credit that every girl, not Cousin Jerry, but every main girl in this has a different type of reaction to this news about book burning or book banning, right? Which is, Tootie's like, the books must have done something bad, so fuck it. Blair says, well, fuck it, but if you really want it, just go and buy it in the town. What does it matter? Sort of normal Blair bullshit capitalism.
Apathy.
Joe's like, well, the system fucks you. You can't win because you're just going to get screwed. And Natalie's outraged. She's like, we need, like, I can't believe this, And then
she's the one who wants to do something.
No, and then Mrs. Garrett is like, yeah, Natalie, you should do something. And she's like, what? I should? So it's this, everyone gets their own bad opinion about this.
Tootie adds that you could wait for the movie to come out.
Yeah.
That's the worst opinion of all. Just shut up, Tootie. And Mrs. Garrett's even like, shut up, Tootie. She's like, that's not the point. Tootie wants less books to read.
Yeah.
Then this is America.
Yeah.
As she explains the First Amendment, and then Blair interrupts to shame Natalie, but then also distract her with a dessert by going, does that speech come with apple pie?
Exactly.
Jerry tries to bring things back to reality by offering to sign a petition, and Blair's like, you can't do that, Jerry. Don't you know you don't go to school here?
And then Jerry's like, oh, yeah, that's right. I was just here. I came all the way up here from my Manhattan apartment that is full of my dying plants to learn about soap operas, and now you're talking about book banning? Well, you really raised my ire. I will sign that for you.
Jerry's like, I hate censorship, which is a hot take. And she also says, I think the most profound moment of this episode was probably when Jerry said, that she doesn't want people throwing tomatoes at her before she gets to tell the jokes.
Yeah. But again, as you said about Cousin Jerry coming in with the hot takes, if there is one thing that that stand-up comedians, especially those on the right that tend more towards the less liberal ones, constantly worrying about censorship and performing at school campuses.
Yeah.
So I guess Cousin Jerry would be friends with, say, a Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe really is. But the soaps are back, so the conversation's over. Mrs. Garrett's going to go speak to Moose Jaw, but Joe optimistically reminds her she can't beat the system. So Mrs. Garrett tells Joe she's got to speak out. I'm surprised Joe's taking this stance.
Well, really? The fact that the system never works?
The fact that he's not willing to try to make a change. She seems like the kind that wants to make a change normally, just not this episode.
I don't know. I feel like Joe's the cynical one. She's always like, the system always fucks you. Don't even bother trying. And then Mrs. Garrett is at her most breathy and condescending. She's like, Joe, if something's going on here, I think it's wrong. I have to speak out. It's a responsibility, not an option.
It's true.
And Natalie says, you see, Joe, we can't take this line down. And then Mrs. Garrett's like, well, yeah, okay, what are you going to do about it? Natalie, as though she has just woken up from a nap that she's been taking for the first half of this episode. She goes, what? She was just going to be fucking outraged and not do anything about it.
Yeah, that's bizarre. I don't understand why she just suddenly became a moron out of the blue.
Yeah.
Mrs. Garrett has to remind her that she's the editor of the school paper. And similarly, Blair had to remind Jerry she doesn't go to the school. Can't these people just know things already?
I know. Yeah, she's like, you're the editor of the school paper. You should print headlines, write editorials, take it to the people, make some noise, make a lot of noise. And she's screaming this right in a 14-year-old's face. And then Natalie, very bitchily says, you're making a lot of noise right in my face.
And that was the end of the scene. That's one of the worst comedic blows in sitcom history.
Completely.
It was terrible. So now we're in the lounge. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, of course. But here's the thing, is that also these episodes are written where, again, kind of classic facts of life, where they make characters do things that seem so out of character for the archetype that they have set them up for, right?
Yeah, so they're doing that now.
Natalie is the social justice warrior. She didn't have to be reminded by Mrs. Garrett to write a fucking editorial. She would have written that shit in her brain on the way back while she was screaming at Joe from the library.
I agree with you completely. It's annoying. It doesn't fit in with the character. I don't care for it at all. And speaking of not caring for it, here is maybe the worst scene in all of season 3. And we had to get all the way to the fucking butt end of season 3 to get a scene that has no children in it, no jokes in it, just Mr. Parker and Mrs. Garrett and a runner about strudel that's never funny.
What are you talking about? I thought that strudel gag was hilarious.
Oh, okay. So Mr. Parker is talking about Mrs. Garrett's strudel. He's remembering it, and I know that because the opening line of the scene is Mrs. Garrett going, "Forget my strudel."
Yeah.
He tells her that a few books being removed from the library is no need to panic. Right now, he wants to know what comes after vanilla extract. He's writing down the recipe, like the campus doesn't have a fucking Xerox machine. Right. I just noticed that sad water fountain in the corner of the lounge. It's 7 feet from the cafeteria, which is connected to the kitchen. Who needs this?
I don't know. Anyway, but let me just make a point about this. I actually don't think this is a terrible scene because Mrs. Garrett is acting her ass off about something very serious, which is the fact that she thinks that he's running this school like an administrator and not like an educator. And I think that's okay. I think that this is a serious issue, and they treat it seriously. not unlike, unlike the other episodes that deal with sexual abuse, this one they're like, we need to have this be very serious. And Mrs. Garrett is, trying to stake a claim to, have him push back on these angry parents.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm not saying that the concept of the scene isn't good, and I'm also not saying that Mrs. Garrett isn't acting, because she's great. But as like a written scene, you have 4 other girls that could literally be doing any kind of funny thing that you want. You could have Cousin Jerry got her head stuck in like a can or something, so you don't have to look at her haircut. She just comes in and just like, hey, I'm sorry guys, I just need just 1 second. Could just somebody pull this off my head? And then you're like, okay, that scene made me laugh or something. They had these tools at their disposal, and instead they just literally say the same thing over and over and over. It's a good thing to say, but it so rarely develops out of what it is.
However, I will say this, though, so Mrs. Garrett is coming to Mr. Parker to basically complain about the fact that books are being banned in their life.
4, not even just the 3, 1 secret one.
An extra one that popped in that was Joyce, apparently, which we only got the mention of that later. But I will say, so he's just trying to like stonewall her and be like, I need to know how to make your apple strudel. My wife's going to kill me if you don't give me the fucking secret of how to make this fucking strudel. Which, okay, cute. And then Mrs. Garrett is like, she tries to take a number of different tactics. Like, this isn't what you should be doing. You're running this like a business. You're not running this like an educator. And then she takes a different tactic and say that the librarian has been trained to make book selections, and now people who don't have this qualification are overriding her decisions. That is not what librarians are trained to do.
I know that was one of the things, and also it's like they spun it to be like, aren't you worried about Moose Jaw Muldoon's feelings?
Yeah, no, but here's the thing: librarians are trained in library science. They're trained to be information experts. Sorry, my 7 o'clock tears.
I hear.
So library science is defined as the field of study that teaches how to manage books and other information, particularly through collecting, preserving, and organizing books and other materials. They are not the people in charge of acquisition of books. They are people who know how to get you the information that you require. So Mrs. Garrett is wrong about what librarians' responsibilities are.
Yes. Also,
librarian splain.
No, it's quite all right. I would like to strudel splain you for a second. Would you like to know what the secret to a good strudel is?
Lots of lard and fat.
Well, yeah, butter. But that's not really the secret. Although a good strudel uses about 8 sticks. The secret is for a crumble to mix in there, crush Nilla wafers. It will give it texture and flavor.
Are we talking about the same thing? Are you talking about a strudel or a crumble?
A strudel. You put the crumble within the strudel.
Inside the pocket?
Yes.
Okay.
With brown sugar.
So I was thinking of like German strudel, which are those like long, they look sort of like baguettes, but they're flaky pastry, and they have the inside. It's usually apples, maybe with some cinnamon, sugar, raisins. Zabar's in New York City makes a really delightful one that I loved when I was a little kid, which was cream cheese and cherries.
Yes, it's just like that. You just mix the crushed Nilla wafers with the sugar in the apples.
Huh. I wouldn't know. I'm not sure. Okay, next time I make a strudel, I'll try yours.
All right. It should prevent it from getting too moist, so that it keeps the pastry crisp. It's because in olden times they'd use breadcrumbs.
I will say this. This recipe sounded crazy to me.
Yes. Although it was 2 eggs and what?
3 large apples, 2 cups of flour, 2 eggs, and then she doesn't explain how much sugar. And there's also vanilla in this.
Yes.
I don't like this recipe.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, she's really known for her strudel. It is kind of Mr. Parker's thing. Like, if there's a Mr. Parker episode, he's going to talk about strudel.
Yeah, didn't he do that the last time where he was like, oh, like, because she was negotiating with him for the budget or something, and he was like, when can I get my strudel on or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's going to happen again. It's going to happen where his need for strudel drives her to quit Eastland, and then after she doesn't work at Eastland anymore, he's going to come back and he's going to be like, strudel. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
Nancy is to Roger as Mr. Parker is to strudel. Anyway, upon seeing Mrs. Garrett's somber face,
yes,
he admits there's a secret board of trustees who's banned the books. They're angry about him corrupting their children. He tried to resist. The school tried to resist, but the group threatened to take their kids out of Eastland, so he had to sell out.
Yeah.
He's worried about the school closing. She doesn't think it's going to happen. He takes his dick out and slaps her in the bouffant and says she's being naive.
Yeah.
He considers himself lucky they only lost 4 books, and she's like, this time. It's very dramatic and very boring at the same time. It's sort of like that Big and Little TV.
Well, but also, yes, it is. It is the big and this tiny but big TV. But I do have to say that she says, how long has this been going on? And he's like, a year, which is too long for Mrs. Garrett to not have known, and also to not have known that this was going on in America.
Okay, the second one, sure. But she says it earlier. She says, I've heard of it happening, but I didn't know it could happen here. So she knew about it in America, but she's a dietitian. She is weirdly the parent of 4 girls for no reason, and the dietitian. I can understand if she's not up to date on what Moose Jaw Muldoon is dealing with over at the Blair Warner Library.
No fucking way. A year on a campus and she never speaks to that one lady who's a librarian? No, absolutely not. Especially if Moose Jaw Muldoon is so pissed off about the fact that these books are being banned.
Perhaps, but maybe Moose Jaw Muldoon has been scared into silence. We do not know.
She hasn't been. We find out later.
Oh, that's true. All right. So it's private school. They have to be responsive to parents. Mrs. Garrett thinks they'll extort him for everything unless they have the secret to her strudel recipe. He keeps talking about these letters he's gotten, like they're death threats. Mrs. Garrett talks about how the squeaky wheel gets the Oreo.
Yes.
I dated somebody named Squeaky once.
Was it Squeaky from?
Close. So anyway, we learned about Joyce and Vonnegut. That's filth that'll pervert any kid. This Garrett's like, perverted kids are the best kids, and you know it, Parker. He gets out.
Basically, you've read those 2, and you've jerked off to them. You know how horny those books are. You know, I see both sides of this.
Speaking of horny, have you watched that show Run on HBO?
Yeah, I watched the pilot.
I watched the first 3. That is a horny show.
You know, it's even hornier.
What?
Normal people.
Okay. I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
The second episode has barely any dialogue. It's just them fucking.
All right. I'll be sure to check that out. So he gets outraged at Mrs. Garrett trying to tell him how to do his job since he's the school director and she's the dietitian. It's a big fuck you, and he yells. And also, his hair looks purple in this scene. Have you noticed?
Yeah, because he did one of those like old lady tints.
Yes.
Like a red.
Yes, it does seem that way. I don't know why he would, but he did. After a beat of silence, he asks how many cups of sugar. She's like, guess. And it's the only good thing that happens in the whole scene.
Yeah, so she looks absolutely outraged and disappointed, and then stands up and goes to leave and just goes, guess.
And that should have been the end of the scene.
Yep.
But no, it's not over. She turns around. She tells him she cares about the school, tells him not to aggravate an already tense situation. It's like, oh my God, why won't this scene end? He's asking her to keep silent. She doesn't like that. And then he says he's asking her to put the school first. And I'm asking the director to cut this scene out. He demands Edna's cooperation, and she stares at the camera like, ruh-roh.
Well, yeah, because that's the thing, is that she should have at least had a line where she was like, I understand what you're saying. I don't feel good about it. I feel uncomfortable, but for the sake of the school, I will support this. Because the next scene, we're back in the cafeteria, and Mrs. Garrett is not as Mrs. Garrett-y as she usually is, you know.
For sure.
And Natalie comes over looking for praise about her, you know, her amazing headline, which is, the handwriting is on the wall, but in a few years, no one will be around to read it.
Able to read it. They'll be around. It's like, why is everybody going to die?
No, but here's the thing. That doesn't really get the point across of what we actually want. Like, and it's basically Mrs. Garrett's like, yeah, it sounds good, makes sense. And then,
good, whatever.
Yeah, and then Natalie's like, you know, as thirsty as she always is, asking for fucking praise. She's like, that's all I get? Give it some more Lawrence Welk. And this episode is full of weird old man references.
Yes. Did you know that the Lawrence Welk Show actually ran until May of 1982?
Yeah. It ran from...
This was a profound time.
This ran from 1951 to 1982. So
amazing. Also, Mrs. Garrett is putting little yellow carnations into bud vases because these girls deserve the best.
Yeah. Carnations. The world's most beautiful flower. No, I want to talk about Lawrence Welk. First of all,
please.
I don't really get the, like, can you just give it some more Lawrence Welk? I don't get what that means.
Especially not in 1982, because he was so old, he hardly had any Lawrence Welk to give himself.
Yeah. He was welked out.
Yeah.
But so Lawrence Welk was from either North Dakota or South Dakota. And he was desperate to be a musician. I think he was children of immigrants and didn't start speaking English until he was like in his 20s, where he learned how to speak English. But he was desperate to play the accordion and asked his father if he could front him the $400 for this accordion that he saw in the back of a magazine or something.
Pricey accordion.
$400 at that time, the equivalent.
Wait, can you say that again? What was the equivalent?
So $400 is the equivalent in today's dollars of $5,100.
Oh my God! What an accordion!
Yeah. So he was like, the dad was like, sure, but you know, you will work it off on the farm, like by doing labor. But that was his big thing. He wanted to be an entertainer. He wanted to play the accordionist. Then he moved to LA. He became a TV host of the Lawrence Welk Show, which was, I think, produced and shot in Venice Beach. He was, unfortunately, he was inducted into the International Polka Music Hall of Fame 2 years after his death.
Oh, that's such a shame.
I know. But anyway, so he was famous because of what they called champagne music, right? Which is because the music that he played with his orchestra on the Lawrence Welk Show was as light and bubbly as champagne.
That's why all the guests are in bubbles.
Well, there was
in the opening credit.
Yes. And he was very famous because he was like a maestro, and he would go a 1 and a 2 and then they would play like sort of like elevator music versions of like current, like I think an Elvis song was played in this very milquetoast square manner of like, you know, like a harpist would play it or whatever. Anyway, so the funniest thing is that I was like, yeah, Lawrence Welk. My grandmother fucking loved Lawrence Welk. She would watch the reruns because they rerun it on PBS. She'd be like, this is the type of music that's beautiful and perfect. Why are you always listening to that rap? You know, it was like that sort of thing. Anyway, so Lawrence Welk was also very business savvy and invested a lot in real estate. He owns like 2 giant buildings in Santa Monica, one of which is shaped like a cruise ship that looks out towards the ocean. But also, he developed a resort retirement community that's just north of San Diego called the Welk Resort and Champagne Village. I have been to this place. I was hanging out with a friend of mine who was in town, who's in San Diego for a wedding, and my husband and I drove down there to like see her and like go to the beach with her and her husband and her kids and whatever. And then on the way home, we were like, maybe we should take a different route back. So we took the inner route back to LA from San Diego, and I was like, the Lawrence Welk Resort and Champagne Village, next mile. Exit the highway. We went there. It is crazy. There are like, people have timeshares there. There are 2 golf courses. There's a huge statue of Lawrence Welk. There's like a store you can buy like Lawrence Welk wine. There's a museum that is devoted to him and his musical history. And there is a theater that is operating, well, probably not now during COVID-19, but 365 days a year that shows second-run Broadway musicals.
That sounds amazing.
It was unreal. Anyway, I didn't understand why to even use Lawrence Welk in this episode. Why use anyone else?
I agree, but there's lots of other questions.
Why would little girls in 1982 know who Lawrence Welk is?
Well, he was still on the air that year.
Okay.
That was his last year. I'm sure they made a big deal of his retirement, I would assume. Anyway, so Nat accuses Mrs. Garrett of not appreciating her while walking across Blair and Nat, who are watching TV, standing up like mum and chance so that Natalie can walk past them and call them TV junkies. The blocking is fucking crazy.
Yes.
Like, why? Anyway, Natalie plans on running excerpts from the banned books.
Yeah.
Mrs. Garrett curiously tells her she'll do the right thing.
Because she's not doing the right thing herself and so feels guilty.
She's been compromised.
Indeed.
Speaking of curious, Jerry enters to exit.
Yes. And here's why. Because she comes in, she's like, hi guys, I'm leaving. Bye-bye. And then Blair shushes her. Her own cousin is like, shh, because they're watching the soap opera. Mavis is about to announce her engagement to Father Flaherty, which gets a huge laugh. And then this compels Cousin Jerry to be like, oh shit, I shouldn't go now. I have to find out about this engagement, right?
Yeah, she is willing to let her plants die.
Yeah.
Also, can we talk about Jerry's purple tights with the black saddle shoes?
I didn't see that. I noticed the dress more and the trench coat.
The whole outfit was bananas.
It was weird. It was also like not really Cousin Jerry-ish. Like Cousin Jerry she seems like a cool jeans, sneakers, and then her, sporty t-shirt that says, I'm not drunk, I just have cerebral palsy. Not like a dress and like tights and blah, blah, blah. Maybe she got that dress when she got her Scott Baio haircut. Yeah,
I was thinking that she got a makeover because she didn't bring up CP at all. This is like the second episode in a row. Really proud of her. But she's losing her identity, at least visually. And so Natalie asked Mrs. Garrett about the time she recorded the hit single Taking It to the Streets, but Mrs. Garrett corrects her that was actually the Doobie Brothers.
Okay, I don't know that much about the Doobie Brothers.
Oh, don't worry about it. I got it. Taking It to the Streets was the first Doobie Brothers single to feature Michael McDonald, and it was written by the man himself. And it peaked at number 13 on the billboards, and it made a big change in the band's sound because before that they were like just a rock and roll band, but all of a sudden with Michael McDonald as the new lead singer. And can you imagine being a band and then all of a sudden Michael McDonald is now the voice of your band? Like, we didn't start out singing with like a now we have to listen to that for the rest of our lives. That is a nightmare. Anyway, that's what I know about the Doobie Brothers.
But Michael, wait, who am I? Oh, I'm thinking of Steely Dan. Are Doobie Brothers and Steely Dan kind of in the same bucket?
No.
Okay.
They're in the same bucket as it's 70s and it's rock. So. Okay. If your bucket is that big, then yes.
Oh, Fleetwood Mac, are they in that bucket?
I mean, in the 70s rock bucket, yes. You put a lot of people in that bucket. It's a big bucket.
What about Jackson? Does he go in that bucket?
Which one?
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. I only talk about Jermaine Jackson on this podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anyway, so Mrs. Garrett says it's best to step back from the problem as she steps back from her carnations.
Yes.
It's weird. It's not necessary. It's curious. I don't know why it happened.
Well, yeah, so because Mrs. Garrett's like, sometimes, because Natalie's outraged, and she's like, why aren't you helping me with this? I thought, like, you were kind of passionate about this censorship issue. And then Mrs. Garrett's like, censorship. My dentures are about to fall out. But no, she's like, actually sometimes with problems, it's best to step away and maybe the problem will fix itself. Sort of like, yeah, if you feel a lump in your breast, don't go to the doctor. Maybe it'll just go away on its own.
Well, I mean, she is practicing bad advice and she knows it. So that is the lesson at the very least. It was just the way she stepped back from the vases as she said step back that I was like, guys, no, don't care for that. Anyways, the girls are still watching TV, contemplating how hard it'll be for a married priest. Hilarious.
No. So Blair says, can you imagine how difficult it would be for a married priest? So no sex?
Oh, I thought it was like the public is going to shun you.
And then Jerry says, at least he'll be able to hear his own confessions.
Go home, Jerry. Your plants are dying.
Well, so again, I literally wrote down, can you explain this to me?
Because he's a priest and the priest gets confessions. He's also the sinner. So he can just say them and then tell himself to do however many Hail Marys and then he'll be done.
But that's not how confession works. I'm not a Catholic, but I at least know the fact that priests go to other priests for confession. They don't go to themselves. They're not like, oh yeah, I've jerked off yesterday 5 times, and then it's like, well, tell yourself.
Listen, she's not on stage yet, okay? Her soap opera humor is just getting off the ground floor. Okay. It will get better over time, I assume. Okay. Anyway, so then Joe walks in with bad news. Nat's been canned as the editor. But before Natalie can say that, she goes, it's an inky job, but someone's got to do it.
I hated it. I hate that so much.
I wrote, if only Joe could have given her the bad news sooner, we wouldn't have had to hear that joke. Apparently the faculty advisor, who's an asshole, decided that Joe should be the one to give the news. The corporate line is, let's give other kids a chance.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Is it like this is why this show is so fucking lazy and stupid. This is the one scene we all want to see, right? We want to see Natalie get told that she's too spicy online, in the paper, and that she's being canned because she is not towing the corporate line. I could have watched asshole tell Natalie that she was being fired and see Natalie scream and yell and burst into tears. But no, this show's like, you know what? No, let's save the money because we need that set that we barely used in the last scene and that cast of 1,000 parents who come in and out like it's a bus station. We don't need to see this pivotal thing on screen, which had so much fucking impact.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we don't even get to live in Nat's anger because she switches over to being a pussy in the next scene. Yeah. But for right now, Joe says Nat's book editorial made things too hot for everybody. And then Jerry chimes in, so now they're cooling things off. And then Joe goes, they wanted to put a gag on Natalie, and they did. And then I go, how many times are we going to say the same thing?
I wrote, they wanted to put a gag on Natalie, and I wrote down, so do I.
Since this is the season finale, I'm naturally hoping for some kind of cliffhanger where Natalie's been like taken and held hostage by the book banning board, but I don't see it coming.
Yeah, exactly. And we keep moving, and it's basically them sort of circling the fucking drain around this sort of, they can't do that, but they did, but I can't believe it. You should believe it. It's unbelievable, but I can't believe it. But you should for like 5 more minutes just to eat
I know. You're a kid. They want you to be quiet. They tell you to shut up. Mrs. Garrett's like, and when you're an adult, they ask you to compromise. And then she makes a face like she's squeezing back in a tiny little poop. And then the audience applauds, and Charlotte Rae runs to the ladies' room, and we're out of Act 1.
It was rough.
It was rough, but we're back from the break, and the tables have turned, or rather, who's sitting at the table has turned into Natalie, who is now hooked on NBC's new hit soap opera, Search for Tomorrow. They lost the tapes. Tune in tomorrow to see what happened.
So
they search for him.
Where did we leave during that act break?
What do you mean?
We left. We were in the cafeteria.
We're always in the cafeteria.
And we get back, and we're in the cafeteria again.
There are no other rooms. There's only cafeteria and Zool.
Yeah. And so Natalie's now hooked on the fucking soap opera because she lost her job and now is like...
They lost the tapes! It's exciting!
She's binging the soap opera on the boob tube because she doesn't care about books anymore, right?
Yes, apparently some woman loves Richard so much she has to marry his brother. Classic soap stuff. Nat's really into it.
It sounds like Passions. Like, it sounds like one of those shows where it's just like, it so jumps the shark that it's like, I have to marry your brother because I'm carrying your father's son. And it's like, what? You know? Anyway, so my favorite thing about this is that, so now that Natalie has been, kicked in the dirt, pushed out of the fucking newspaper, she loves TV, because she doesn't care about books anymore. And did you notice that the TV is now resting on a pile of books?
Yes. You think that's symbolism, huh?
Exactly. I was like, wow, this is the biggest moment of subtlety I've seen on this stupid fucking show.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tootie comes over and turns off the TV. Fuck you, Tootie. Nat didn't do that to you when she had a real problem when you were watching the TV, but now that you're not the one watching, no one should be. Fuck you, Tootie.
Yeah, and they're like folding napkins?
No, they're putting the tablecloths on the tables. So apparently Tootie wants Natalie to take some action, but Tootie should just shut up and let Natalie process and watch her damn TV show that you were watching from the last scene, you hypocrite. Blair tells her to do something.
Exactly. No, it's like, and then Blair's like, Natalie, you're the one who should be upset. You're the one who lost your job. And Natalie's like, you know what? Fuck you. I want to process. I want to chill out. I'm going through the 7 stages of grief. All I want to do, just stand on the side. I'm tired of doing things anymore because you fucking lazy assholes are being jerks to me. I just want to mellow out.
Yeah, and so what does Blair do? She puts a tablecloth over the TV that Natalie's watching.
Because she's a cunt.
Yes, but Natalie dutifully removes the TV from the table and the books and resets. Joe walks in and announces that Buffy, the boring, bungling bozo Klein, has been announced as the new editor of the school paper, and Joe can't take orders from somebody named Buffy. She tells Tootie she'll punch Buffy in the vagina. Yeah. Tootie wants to know why she was picked, and Joe mispronounces the word uncontroversial.
Yeah, uncontroversial.
It was very weird.
Exactly the sort of line rating that I would expect from a woman who's from the South Bronx. Uncontroversial.
So weird. Natalie says she's unconscious, which is not the best burn, but whatever, she's hurt. I'm going to give it to her. Blair now turns off the TV, and this annoys me. Just let her watch her TV. Let her find out what happens to Richard. We don't have DVR. We don't have Hulu. Just let her watch it.
Exactly. Well, also, here's the thing. Natalie, you want to watch TV? It's a portable television. Go literally anywhere else and watch it. You can take it into your fucking bedroom and eat your, bedroom cake and watch your soaps. Watch your stories.
That sounds great. Anyway, so she'll now be known as Natalie No Comment Green, the discreet blowjob queen. She has some real talk and a bud vase coming from Tootie. So much bud vase work in this episode. Joe wants to know what happened to her crusading editor. And we know what happened to her crusading editor. She was fired. And why is that? So Natalie has to explain it all over again. She got shit canned. She got busted. 86. Out of there.
Yeah. She got canned. But I just want to pause for 1 second because you just kept referring to those as bud vases.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a specific type of vase. And I don't mean to be judgmental, but I am a little surprised that you know what a bud vase is.
I mean, if you work at a restaurant or a florist, both of which I've done, you know things.
You did work at a florist.
Yeah, during the writer's strike, I went from being on a TV show to working at a florist, which was right when The Devil Wears Prada came out. This is one of my favorite stories to tell. My boss was this gay Asian man, worked out all the time, very, very fancy. He'd wear a fur hat that was like totally round. And because The Devil Wears Prada came out and I was his assistant, he would refer to me as Emily. So he would always be like, do this, Emily, do that. And I would always have to come and open the flower shop way before him. And I'd be there for like an hour with my coffee, doing my instant messenger, taking calls, farting up a storm. And at one point, he's coming up the stairs to the offices, and he just goes, "You farting again, Emily?" Anyway, I think about that all the time, and so I thought I would say it because my time at the flower shop came up.
Yeah. So when I'm just a little surprised at your depth of knowledge of different types of vases. So I'm just impressed. Was this in New York?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Scott's Flowers. ScottsFlowersNYC.com.
This is literally when you and I met one another because we were doing improv together at UCB, and you and I would instant messenger chat all day long, G-chat, and you were like, I'm at the farting up a storm at the florist shop, LOL. But I also distinctly recall that you were obsessed with Mrs. Fields cookies.
I hate them.
Oh.
I hate them more than anything.
Yeah,
I have a passion. I wrote a script about the time that I went into a Mrs. Fields cookies store and I took a cookie, I took a bite out of it, and I went, "This is not good." I looked the woman directly in the eye and I threw out the cookie and I left. Yes. I will not go back there.
No, and I remember we were having this conversation over GChat, and I was like, "Wow, feel so passionate about Mrs. Fields," and you were like, "Britt, cookies are my family." Like it was like you went dead. Like you were so passionate about it. You were like, "It's like solemn duty to eradicate Mrs. Fields from this world and tell other people to not eat them."
Yeah. If you can find it, David's Cookies. That's the best cookie store.
That's the one. And also, I remember we were doing a class at UCB, and we had to do like object work and scene work to like describe things like, "Oh, this is what a telephone looks like," and "Oh, here's a teacup," whatever, And I remember, I think one of the suggestions was for me when I was having to do this in front of our class was upscale florist, and I mimed a giant orchid. And everyone was like, "That seems a little over the top, Britt." And you were like, "I work at a florist shop. I know that is accurate." So I was like, as soon as I heard that from you, I was like, Dominik is my friend.
I've got two David's Cookies stories that I want to tell now because I don't know when they'll come up again. But one of them was that I was really excited for the premiere of the Gina Davis show. I actually had a giant poster of the Gina Davis show in my apartment for a long time. And I went with Grant to what I found out was the only David's Cookies store in all of New York, which I didn't even know existed. And so we went to that Subway on I believe it's the Upper East Side, where it's like the longest stairs of all time.
Yeah, by Bloomingdale's.
Yes, and I raced up them to try to, because we had to get the cookies before the cookie store closed. The cookie store closed at 9, and Gina Davis show premiered at 9:30.
Oh my God.
And a plan to get the cookies, get the Subway. It was all very tight. And we got beaten by those stairs. We got like halfway up the stairs and we just sat down and we're like, I don't I don't think this plan's going to work. We're never going to get back in time for Gina Davis. And we just sadly walked down the stairs. I went the next day and got the cookies, but I remember that. The other one was that when I went to Puerto Rico to work on Snatch 2 years ago, 3 years ago, time means nothing. I went to Puerto Rico and they had a mall there, and that mall was trapped in the 80s. They had a Ticketron. They had their Burger King had the chicken tenders from the 80s and the early 90s that are not their current nuggets. And there was a David's Cookies store, which are so hard to find now. And I went there several times and got David's Cookies. And then the day we were there till the hurricane, the day that we got evacuated, we had a car coming to pick us up at 9:30. But that mall opened at 8:30. And so I got in my rental car and I went down to the mall. And I was the first person in the mall. I darted to the David's Cookies. I bought $60 worth of cookies. They gave me 2 tote bags. And I got back in my car and I almost missed the flight out from Puerto Rico during the hurricane.
Good. I mean, that's a great story. Also, I think the name of your memoir should be Those Aren't the Current Nuggets.
All right. I will work on that memoir ASAP. I just have to get through, 7 more seasons of The Facts of Life?
Yes.
No, 6 more. Math is my enemy. Anyway, let's get back into the show. So, Tootie tells them about the little old man that sued the entire city of Washington, D.C. because they wanted to put a superhighway in his garden, and he lost. Also, a superhighway is just an expressway. Why are you calling it a superhighway, you weirdos?
I don't know. But the reason why Tootie brings this up is because, they're trying to get Natalie to be like, we should argue about this. At least we would, if we make a case, we might be able to win. Doesn't matter if we lose, we might be able to, have these people take us seriously, and, get these books reinstated. But if we don't try at all, then we're part of the problem.
And even though he lost, he did tie them up in court long enough for the harvest, which I did enjoy as a joke. I did. I laughed at it. Natalie laments they're not lawyers, they're just kids, and kids get shit on, and Blair so strangely points out that kids can change things. Remember Lord of the Flies?
Yeah.
I hated that book so much as a kid.
It's horrible. And also the great thing is that in the last week, there was a story that was published saying that there were little kids that were shipwrecked, left on an island recently for 15 months. And it didn't turn into the Lord of the Flies. Everyone can find this on the internet. They all banded together to create a coalition to support one another.
What? Why do I not know about this? That sounds crazy.
Yeah. The article was published 4 days ago.
I will look into that. I've been alphabetizing my records and researching this episode. So anyway, when Joe points out that the kids killed each other in that book, Blair just goes, "Kids will be kids." So weird.
I mean, does that mean that all of these little girls would kill one another?
You wish, don't you? Nat gives up and goes back to watching TV. Mrs. Garrett enters and Joe begs Natalie to talk, and Natalie just blows up. She doesn't want to be talked to, but Mrs. Garrett doesn't care. Oh well. Mrs. Garrett's wearing a pink dress with a pink blouse with little dildos on it. Convince me otherwise.
I can't. It was bad, and it also clashed with her hair.
Yes, it was very bad. And it was definitely dildos.
Yes, or lightsabers. I will say this, that and not to put a blanket statement out there, but people with such fiery orangey red hair as Mrs. Garrett should not wear pink blouses.
You heard it here first, and probably not first.
She should wear something that's contrasting and beautiful, like blue. But that pink and combined with her hair was just it was off-putting.
I am sorry. I'm sorry you were put off. I hope you weren't eating at the time. Anyway, Mrs. Garrett is mad at herself that she didn't push Nat more. She talks about responsibility, but then she pushed out. She's going to change that. She calls herself This People.
Yes. So she goes, I'm angry too at myself. Things have to be worked out. People have to do things. This people. Pointing at herself.
Yeah.
Ugh, it was bad.
It was weird. She explains her plan. She's going to go to the board meeting. Parents will be there. Mr. Parker will be there. She'll wear her best dildo blouse. It will be great. And that's like, Mrs. She, don't be hasty. Like she's going to war or something. And Tootie worries that it'll be against everybody else. But Mrs. Garrett's like, no, I'm a tough bitch. Why are they trying to talk her out of this? They were just trying to talk Natalie into action. And now they're trying to talk Mrs. Garrett out of action.
Oh, really? This stupid show is inconsistent about its dumb fuck messaging? How unusual.
Mrs. Garrett wonders what's the worst that could happen, and Joe says they might spit roast you like that McDonald's girl in last week's Backdoor Pilot. Yeah. Mrs. Garrett was hoping for something a little less graphic, and Tootie points out that she could get fired.
Yeah.
That would have been a better act out, at least several scenes ago. But whatever, pacing. No. We don't care about that. And now we come to the last scene, the scene I have been dreading.
Do you really need to identify all of these people?
I did all the work, so I'm going to say all the work that I did. Okay. Not like I'm just going to go run off and research it right now. Anyway, lots of guest cast, very few jokes. 3 white people are having a conversation about the Studs Terkel book working and whether or not it should be banned.
So wait, hold on. Let's just set the scene. So basically, this is Mrs. Garrett going to save the day at the board meeting, right? And to, speak truth to power and say, you shouldn't ban books. That's bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Stand up to all these mean parents who are trying to get people to not masturbate to Slaughterhouse-5. Anyway, Mrs. Garrett comes in wearing her dildo shirt. She comes across 3 white people. And they're sort of, peas and carrotsing between the 3 of them. And they say, the older man says, did you hear about that Studs Terkel book working that they want our kids to read? That's fine. I read it, but not until my Kathy is 35, so it doesn't fuck her in the head.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, and so, again, another kind of weird reference that not a lot of girls who are watching a show about teenage girls would know who the fuck Studs Terkel is.
Yes, and let me just scroll to my notes on working. Yes, it's
a fiction book that is divided into various chapters, just about regular Americans and their relationship to their jobs. So one is about service people. Sorry, you stop moving.
No, you're good.
Yeah, so there's one that's basically it's there are people who are farmers. There's one about harvesters. There's a chapter that's about people who work in service, like hairdressers, doormen, delivery people, postal workers. And it's just about the very granular aspects of how Americans view their job and how it contributes to society. Studs Terkel was a leftist, but it's not that insane that school kids would be reading this book. It's not about hookers.
Well, you said normal people, but Rip Torn is one of the people in it, and he's anything but normal.
Well, there were 3 famous people who were actually in it. I think one was a basketball coach, one was Rip Torn, and I can't remember the other one.
Well, let's talk about these people. We're going to talk about 2 of these people because the younger man doesn't speak, therefore I do not know what his name is. Okay. But man 1 is played by Edward Penn. Yeah. Even despite his age, this is actually one of his first gigs. He played Marty in A Different Strokes in 81, but he also played Marty in A Jeffersons in 1982, and this is his first non-Marty role.
What's his name in this?
Man 1.
Is that a step up from Marty?
No, he follows up playing Mark in a TV movie called The Ladies, and then Marvin in An American Playhouse before mixing it up with a G name finally when he's Glenn Adair on a single episode of Bold and the Beautiful. He did a Gary Shandling, he did a Cheers, did a Seinfeld, 2 Murder, She Wrote, of course, 2 different characters, a Wonder Years, and then he finally reprised his role here as Man One because he also played Man One on an episode of the Golden Girls spinoff, The Golden Palace.
Wow.
Yes. He also did A Nanny, a Frasier, and he closed out his career with a TV movie called Dad, the Angel, and Me, which starred Judge Reinhold, Carol Kane, and Shirley Knight. And you can find it on YouTube.
Okay.
Now, the woman, she's Woman One, even though there is no Woman Two.
I was a Woman One. She looks like a real cunt.
She does. Beverly Dixon is her name, and Beverly Dixon's performance of Woman One was actually a reprise of her character Woman One on a 1980 episode of Mork and Mindy. These are the dregs of guest cast people. Yeah. She previously done a Kojak, a Police Story, a Ropers, a Three's Company. She'd go on to do a Hotel, Murphy Brown, and she'd close out her career as bickering wife on Roseanne. Yes. Anyway, so this episode is referenced on Studs Terkel's wiki page.
It sure is. I saw that too.
I was delighted. Anyway, so Man One, yeah, we talked about this. He's not going to let Kathy read her book, so she's 35 and it can't do any damage. What is in this book? What is in the Studs Terkel book that will damage a 34-year-old Kathy?
So here's the thing, is that I'm sure that Studs Terkel, who was a sort of semi-actor, he acted in a couple things, but he was mostly a nonfiction writer and historian. He was from Chicago. He was a huge fan of the baseball team there. He was in a movie with, I think, John Cusack that was about them, fucking up the World Series or something like that. It doesn't matter. But I love the fact that they put this book into this episode as though it is reading Lolita. They could have led with anything else.
It's 10 years old at this point.
Yeah.
So weird. Also, that other guy that doesn't get allowed to say anything, he looks like he went to Joe's professor's cocaine party.
He sure does. He does.
It was there was going to be another cocaine party and he got the day wrong. And he's like, aren't we all meeting in the cafeteria or something?
This is about the book banning? Yeah, I'm not here for that. I'm here for the cocaine. The cocaine that Tootie was doing in the first scene.
Yes. Continuity. And so Mrs. Garrett looks nervous when she sees these angry white people. Realize she says out loud she's dead. Her shoulder pads are so pointy and her collar is poked up like she's an angry lizard. So I think she's going to do fine.
Yeah. So basically they say, it's the guy's like, I don't want my daughter to read this until she's old enough to read it. And he says, it's just a simple matter of keeping improper value out of the room. She says, the woman, the creepy woman. And then the guy says, she means filth. And then Mrs. Garrett goes to nods and is like, I'm dead. And then walks away and then has another random conversation with another random stranger who's like, I'm outraged about these books, these offensive books. And she's like, oh, Mrs. Garrett's like, oh, fuck. And she's like, yeah, I can't believe they're trying to ban books here. And then does a huge expository thing where I thought they were going to do a spin-off of this woman. I'm Mrs. I'm Linda Stanton's mom. This is my husband who's very late always to these sorts of events, but I brought my newsletter along. So you can get this, but also here's a huge amount of irrelevant information about me.
Yes, we learned that she's not a lesbian, even though she's dressed like one, because her husband has a few choice words for the board if he ever gets here. Why does she have to have a husband? Well, at all. I don't understand this. Also, who are you? Well, her name is Betty Schuster. She is played by Susan Davis, who might be most famous for being the voice of Pippi Longstocking in the live-action Pippi Longstocking movie when they dubbed it into American English. She's the voice of Pippi. She's been working since 1958 on weird shows I've never heard of, like Grand Jury and The Millionaire. And The Millionaire in 1958, she somehow played Mother. How old is this woman? She's still working today. She had a 2020 release. Anyway, she steadily worked in 1-hour dramas in the 50s and the 60s. Her first multicam was on My Three Sons, where she was Shorty's mother. Again, a mom. That's the same year she was Pippi. She also did a voice on the Skatebirds and the CB Bears. She was in the movie War Games from 1983. She will return to Facts of Life in season 5, episode 22, when Blair needs Cousin Jerry's help with a charity function. She's going to play the fancy lady, Winifred Morris. She was on one of my most favorite shows, Duet, for one episode. It was an early Fox show. She was on Hooper Ann, Punky Brewster. She takes a break for a decade, and she comes back with all these shorts, the indie shorts. She played Beverly in Jew, a short film from 2012. And this year she plays Mim in 420, which is about a dispensary owner. Yes. Betty Schuster is Linda's mother. Linda Schuster, of course, the girl we never met. So upset when she read that newsletter. Wait, what?
What newsletter?
Betty produces the newsletter out of nowhere and then spots her husband, leaving Mrs. Garrett dumbfounded.
The newsletter. Reading the newsletter. Here's the thing. Wouldn't it have been fun to see our girls craft this newsletter together?
Absolutely. It also would be wonderful to see this timeline add up, because people have been apparently have received these newsletters as of a week ago. We talk about how everybody's been tittering about it for a week. And also they have to travel in the mail. The girls have to write the thing and come up with it. How far off was this board meeting that Mrs. Garrett's like, I'm going to the board meeting? Sounds like it's like in a couple of days.
It was in a week. She says the board meeting is next week.
There was no way for them to get all this done with the mail and everything, but whatever.
Certainly not.
Whatever. Sorry, go ahead.
Mrs. Garrett is like, she comes up to this woman who's clearly still working. And she's like, are you here about the offensive books? And then Mrs. Garrett is like, oh, fuck. Another one of these dickheads who hates books and wants to ban them. And then she goes, oh, no, we're on the same side. And then
they do a really long, double-armed, claspy thing.
Yeah. And then this lady hands over the newsletter and then is like, oh, my husband's here. Sorry, gotta go. You can keep the newsletter. And then in walks Natoots and Joe, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, Natalie's got a great entry line.
Yeah, so Mrs. Garrett's like, what are you doing here? And so she sounds like a robot that is losing battery, which my computer is right now.
And she's been doing 24 episodes.
Yeah, and she goes, and Natoots says, we heard there was a board meeting at sundown. Bang, 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 bang.
Why was that necessary? Why not have her say something funny?
The Natalie bot has stopped working in this episode.
It sure has. Tootie goes, they're all exhausted. They're just done. Tootie goes, you didn't think we were going to let you go in there alone. But yeah, we absolutely did, especially you, Tootie. There's nothing that would make me think otherwise. But Nat misinterprets Mrs. Garrett being like, duh, as her being overwhelmed. When did these newsletters get sent out? Jesus. Mrs. Garrett.
The other thing is that how did these little girls do something in secret from Mrs. Garrett when they can't do anything and without her knowing?
And why do it in secret? Why not just be like, we're doing this, we're all in this together?
Help Xerox. Help stuff envelopes. Also, the fact that they make a big joke where it's like, they sent the newsletter to all the parents so that they know what was going on. And then Tootie's like, well, wait till Mr. Parker gets the Xerox bill. And it's like, Xerox bill? Are you just trying to cross me over Xerox? That's not the problem. Obviously paper, but stamps. It's the stamps.
Yes, stamps are definitely more of a challenge and pricier. Also, they had so many days to tell Mrs. Garrett. I don't know why this had to be a surprise. None of it makes any sense at all. And then there's another incongruity where we don't read the newsletter out loud
Yeah.
The girls have to explain the contents to Mrs. Garrett, who's already read it. And Nat says, how did you know it was from us? And Mrs. Garrett says it has your unmistakable style. But according to Nat, it also is signed your former editor. So why would you ask how Mrs. Garrett knew it was her if you signed it your former editor? It has Nat's unmistakable signature on it. Come on, writers. It took me 1 fucking second to think of that. And I was stoned as fuck, and it was 3 a.m. Anyway, so they do specify they mailed the copies to Eastland parents, which also does confirm that they have a fucking Xerox, which if they have a Xerox, why did Mr. Parker have to take down notation of the strudel? Why couldn't it just be like, Plah!
Because maybe Mrs. Garrett is such a genius chef that she keeps all of her recipes up in her cabeza.
In the hair.
In the hair. And in
yes. Anyway, so Tootie just said, okay. They marked every letter also notice of expulsion.
Yeah.
What a sadistic thing to do.
Well, it's to make sure that there's insurance, to make sure that they that all the parents would open the envelope.
Yeah, my mom would just see that and be like, you're in so much trouble. And I would be like, I wonder what I was expelled for. Probably just being a jerk. Nat prattles on about journalistic integrity and silent majorities and whatnot. And finally, Blair's hair arrives with news of the pending arrival of one Monica Warner from New York City. She's going to be fashionably late the way she likes, and she's bringing everybody to be fashionably late with her, which is more like being nuisanceably late.
Yes, absolutely. 1 second, keep talking.
All right, so Tootie's dad is flying in from Washington. Joe's mom is coming. They're all going to be in the same limo. I honestly would rather be watching that than watching this scene. Joe worries the limo is going to be sold and stripped for parts, but they should travel through Weehawken, which they could get them a great deal on parts.
Well, yeah, but so she doesn't even make that joke, which is funny because she's like, oh, you say your mom is coming to pick up my mom in the Bronx? Yeah, she ain't going to make it here. And it's like, it would be so much better if it was like, well, if it was more specific, not just if you go to the Bronx that and your mom is, and she also says your mom's driving a limo. I thought there was a funny joke in there where it was like, yeah, Blair's mom is the limo driver.
That's how they have all their money. Anyway, Mrs. Garrett's overwhelmed. Tootie tries to talk about that fucking old man again.
Yeah.
As more parents start to arrive.
And then Natalie's like, Jesus Christ, can you just shut the fuck up about that little old man?
Blair goes to save some seats because Monica Warner does not stand. No, and there's like 30 of them in their party now.
But again, that's such a weird thing. That is the blow for the kids, right? That's their big comedic blow. We get this catharsis with Mrs. Garrett and Mr. Parker being like, oh shit, wow, you know, I guess we worked this out, right? But the thing is that the little girls, the girls go out on us like, would you stop with the little old man?
They're gone for the season. This is their exit bit.
What is this?
I don't know. There's a lot of questions. So the girls file into the auditorium, but Mr. Parker appears, pulls Mrs. Garrett away for a moment. She's ready to bite his head off, but he's downright delighted by the sheer multitude of people. And then a man stops by and says hello, and Mr. Parker and Mrs. Garrett are like, hey, but they don't know who the fuck he is. But I do.
And here I was thinking, I'm on the last page of my notes. We're going to be done with this right now. Nope. Back in. Nope. Suck right back in, Dominik.
It's time to talk about Man 2. He's played by Perrin Page, who has the best name of all the guest cast this week, Perrin Page. He went his entire career. This is my favorite. This is totally my favorite fact about Perrin Page. He went his entire acting career without ever getting a character name.
Wow.
Until his very last role. So I'm just going to go through his credits because I found this great. So he was sound man on One Day at a Time. He recurred on MASH as the driver. 5 episodes. He's Man 2 here. He's not even man 1. He's fucking man 2.
Well, we already know who man 1 is. We covered him.
I know, but like, you know, if you don't get a name in a show, you at least hope the number next to your gender is 1. But not Perrin Page. Oh no. He played orthopedic surgeon in the 1983 movie Digital Dream. They're getting really creative with ways to not give this guy a name. Orthopedic surgeon. Digital Dream happens to be the first 70 millimeter 6-track digital stereo film ever made. Anyway, he was dad in The Wood Chipper Massacre, a straight-to-video romantic comedy, I assume. On Law and Order, he got to be jury foreman.
Wow.
So he never even got to play man 1. And then he was bartender in the 2002, this went on for decades, 2002 short film Temple Street Blues. But finally, in 2005, he got a name. He played Father Alvin in the short film, you ready for it?
Alvin and the Chipmunks.
All Bookies Wear Speedos. It has no plot on IMDb, nothing about it, but it is 18 minutes long, and it features the song Red Blooded Man by Jack Bank. Not Jack Black, but Jack Bank.
Okay, so here, let me say something.
Well, one more fact about just to continue is that Jack Bank has one song on Spotify. It's called The King Fivel Shuffle, and it appears to be a rockabilly song about an alien, and I cannot find out why that song exists. And that's all I have on Jack Bank and all I have on Perrin Page. Please go ahead.
I was going to say that All Bookies Wear Speedos sounds like a Mad Lib.
I know.
All movie title, All Blanks Wear Blanks. All Cowboys wear
Spanx.
Thanks, exactly. Jack.
Yeah,
It's what kind of song is it? It's Fievel Goes West.
It's called The King Fivel Shuffle, and it's a rockabilly song about an alien named Fievel.
And the alien is also a little Jewish mouse from Eastern Europe who comes to New York to run the streets and have great tragedy in his life. Yes. This is the threequel for An American Tale. Fievel Goes Rockabilly. All right, so Mr. Parker explains, I was so sad when that man showed up. I was like, are you kidding me? We're so late into this episode. But Mr. Parker explains he's been getting angry calls from people all week about the books being banned. They hate him. Those letters went out immediately. The second that Natalie heard that this thing was going down, the letters went immediately into the mail somehow. Mrs. Garrett. Sorry. Mr. Parker's like, Edna, they hate me, and Mrs. Garrett, because it's a joke-free show, goes, oh, that's wonderful. Because people can't actually say what they mean. They have to fuck up and insult people all the time for no fucking reason. He's a strudel-loving prick. He deserves to be insulted. Yeah, he sold out the show. And he doesn't even notice. Cool. Whatever. It's just for the audience. Anyway, so then they keep going, and like basically he's like, you were right. Like if I was acting like a good administrator, not a good educator, if you just needed someone to run a business and balance the books, they should have just hired Eliot Janeway. Again. Eliot Janeway, Studs Terkel, Lawrence Welk. What 1,000-year-old man wrote this episode? Did Mel Brooks write this? I laughed so hard when I saw there was like basically 30 seconds left, and I wrote, it's fucking 4 a.m. and now I have to learn about Eliot Janeway. Yeah. I'll say this. So, like, I was texting you today being like, I'm sorry, this is taking me so fucking long. And you're like, it's so dramatic. It's so amazing. This episode is so dramatic. I can't believe you're not at the edge of your seat. And I was like, I had to, like, lie down, like, 6 hours in. It took me so long to watch this episode. And you were like, yeah, it's because it's super heavy on research. And I was like, not really. For you, it was, because you had to investigate man number one, man number two, and that weird lady with bad glasses, and that one woman who clearly, apparently, still is alive. Anyway, but the thing is that it's like, Eliot Janeway? Like, put in anyone else. Put in any other economist.
I laughed so hard when I heard that. I was just like, what the fuck are you doing, writers? Anyway, Eliot Janeway is a maverick American economist who is known for his pessimistic outlook on our economy. He was often right. He predicted the credit crunch of the 1980s. He died in 1993 at the age of 80. Why they would make an Eliot Janeway joke on the show for kids at the last second of its season finale, I do not know, but they did.
So he was super pessimistic, always very bearish about the economy. And he was so bearish that everyone he had a nickname, which was Calamity Janeway.
It's a good nickname.
Yeah, it is good.
So Parker is ashamed he was forced into the confrontation. She says they were intimidated. They thought if they were taking a stand, they'd be standing alone. And no, not at all. He was intimidating her.
Yeah.
Man one pokes his head out, wants to get the meeting started. They've got a lot of ground to cover. It could be a long night. And they go in. We're left with that cliffhanger. Man one fucking got like the last line of the season.
No. It says, Mr. Parker goes, well, Edna, it could be a long night. And Mrs. Garrett, very self-satisfied and annoyingly condescending, goes, God.
Yes, that is the last of the season.
So
will the school ban the books? Tune in next season when Tootie has an earwax problem, and we're not going to talk about it. Were you going to say something?
No, this was one of the the type of weird episodes where it's like the stakes are pretty high in terms of being one of those weird conservative schools that bans books and prevents children from getting knowledge.
Yes.
From learning things and understanding themselves. Are you showing me something?
I'm going to take you to see my Smurf because I promised the audience at the very end.
Yes, but we don't see any of that happen. We don't see any of the lively debate between the conservative parents and the administration and the children who want to read and masturbate to these books. We don't see any of that. We don't even see them make the fucking newsletter that they sent out.
Nope.
We watch them watch TV.
Yep.
Sulkily. And Cousin Jerry's just there for no reason.
Yes, for no reason at all. It was such a mind-numbing choice for a season finale.
It's one of those things where it's just like, how did this keep going?
Oh, for like seasons? I don't know, but here's my Smurf.
It's so big. Your Smurf is so big and so blue. And so
it
mad.
Is.
That's my show.
Well, it's Grumpy Smurf. He's got to be pissed. He's going to fall down. You might hear it. All right. Well, Facts of Lovelies. I think that might be it for season 4. Do you have season 3? Do you have any final thoughts before we discuss what's on the horizon for our Lovelies?
Only just that is that. So the next thing we're going to be doing is going to be doing the Facts of Life in Paris.
That is right. Facts of Life go to Paris.
Whatever. We should dress up accordingly. All right.
I'll be naked and have a cigarette with a beret.
Yes. And I am saying I have promised Dominik, because we are doing a lot of COVID-19 pandemic inside activities. I've been exploring a lot of baking. I've been doing a lot of cooking. So for this, I am going to be making Dominik croissant, because he hasn't had them in a while, and I am going to be making Julia Child's croissant. So wish me luck.
I'm so excited. It's my favorite food, croissant, and I cannot wait. And Britt's baking Sorry, Britt's baking is out of this world. So I cannot imagine how good Julia Child and Britt teaming up to make me some Facts of Life croissant. It's just gonna be too much. I can't handle it. And so we are going to be back. I would say roughly next week, right? With this finale. Yeah, we're going to try to do it right around this time of next week. We'll do one big giant celebratory Facts of Life Go to Paris movie.
Yeah.
And we'll probably take like a break for about a week or two.
Just to rebound from the intensity of for me mostly, losing my virginity to a Facts of Life movie is going to really take it out of me before I can take another onslaught of a full season.
So we will take a wee break, and then we will be back shortly, sometime early this summer. Don't you worry your hearts about that, with season 4. So we can get to season 5 where the getting is good and there's croissants everywhere.
And I will say this just about croissant, is that I'm pronouncing it properly because that's how Blair pronounces it.
And I'm pronouncing it croissant. Because that's how I believe Mrs. Garrett's French pastry chef teacher will pronounce it.
Croissant. Yeah.
Croissant. All right. Well, until that madness, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for getting through 24 episodes of season 3. And we're going to deliver you the movie podcast you've been waiting for your whole life. Ever since you watched that Facts of Life Go to Paris movie and we're like, does this suck? This sucks, right? This sucks. We're going to talk about all of it because I've been disappointed by that since I was a kid. I love the show. I hate this movie.
Great. Maybe I'm going to love it because you hate it. And I've been hating all of these episodes since we began.
It's possible. It's possible. I can't imagine you'll like it, but who knows? I hope you do. But at the same time, I hope you don't because it's really funny when you hate stuff. And until then, next time you see me, I'm going to have croissants in my mouth. I promise I'll be eating them on camera because nobody likes eating on camera more than this guy. All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.